A long time ago, I used to use TikTok, but see, my feed wasn't like a bunch of haram stuff. It was actually a bunch of Islamic videos. And so when I'd go on there, I would get some benefit, right? Because maybe I would learn a hadith or learn a dua that would be beneficial. And even if I did scroll past some haram things, it would be made up by all of the good stuff that I saw. Now, you might be in this position too. You might go on TikTok and tell yourself, well, there's a lot of Islamic things, right? I get Islamic videos, things like hadiths that are beneficial. But what I learned is, honestly, this is kind of cope. Because if you learn some of the most important principles about sins and about how sins affect you, you understand that TikTok is bad, not just because of the direct haram things you see. And I mean, firstly, we could just take it at face value. If you go on TikTok, what are the chances that you're going to see music, dancing, and women? There's probably a 95% chance that you'll see one of these things at least one video, even if you scroll past it. Now, the thing is, this is true for other platforms as well, like YouTube, for example. But the thing is with TikTok and also like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts, those ones are very destructive. This is something interesting, but you'll notice that content that's shorter in nature usually has more haram elements, which is why, for example, you see shorts have the most haram stuff like music and that. But if you look at like long-form podcasts, usually, maybe not always, but a lot of times they don't have music or other haram elements. Now, this in and of itself is enough to make TikTok and a lot of these other platforms extremely destructive to you, and they are. But there's one important thing you have to understand. Something everybody says is, I'll just scroll past the haram when I see it. So that way I'm protected from the sin or the fitna. Because at the end of the day, the first look is halal, right? But the truth is, this way of thinking is completely wrong. You shouldn't think that just because the first look is halal, that's okay to keep scrolling and scrolling because you don't know what you're going to get.
Are you serious? No one can skip the haram parts. You're watching a movie. All of a sudden, a woman in a bikini comes up. What are you going to do? Astaghfirullah. Fast forward. Fast forward. No, it's not. It's still there. It's still there. If I ask you, what's the measurement of that woman, you would given it to me.
You see, this is something that Ibn Jawzi, rahmatullahi alayhi, talked about. And he said that when the heart drowns in things that are permissible, not even haram, but things that are permissible, it begins to darken. What this basically means is, if you're on TikTok or on YouTube and you're seeing nothing that's directly haram, it could still be a problem for you. Because this is something you probably noticed. If you scrolled for 6 hours, of course you've seen a lot of haram stuff probably, but even if you haven't, after that session of scrolling, you feel kind of empty, and you also don't really feel the urge to go back to Allah and go pray salah or read Quran or anything beneficial. The reason why that is because you're filling up your heart with things that are not aligned with Allah. So things like mindless scrolling or mindless watching videos, these things are not aligned with Allah, even though they are permissible. You're not committing any sin by doing them. And a consequence of that is that your heart begins to darken. And a dark heart can even be more dangerous than sins themselves. The reason why is because when your heart is dark and when your heart is hard, you're going to be a lot more likely to commit all other sins because you're going to be desensitized to them. I mean, just think about TikTok or short-form content. These things desensitize you to things like women and dancing and music and all of that stuff, which is why a lot of these people that are addicted to it fall into those sins. And I guarantee you, if you cut off TikTok and cut off all of those short-form content, what's going to happen is you're going to find those sins a lot more disgusting, and you're going to repel yourself away from sins like listening to music or watching women or any of that stuff. So this is something super dangerous. Even if you're on TikTok and you're not seeing anything haram necessarily, it could still lead you towards haram, and it could still destroy your heart. And the worst part is, TikTok is like literally designed to keep you hooked. It's designed to destroy your attention span, which unfortunately is what you can see with a lot of Gen Z. This has a very destructive feedback loop because your attention span gets destroyed, so you need to watch more TikTok. You need to go binge even longer, which is going to make you even more desensitized and darken your heart even further. So this is something that can easily spiral your life out of control. So if I could give you just one message, is to understand and really be critical about the content you consume. Because now it's less about the people who you are around compared to the content you consume and the influencers you take from that's going to really change your life. Look at every single piece of content you consume and ask yourself, is this beneficial or is this just mindless entertainment and it's bringing me further away from Allah? And of course, I'm not saying you need to cut out every single piece of content. Of course, that has benefits, but a lot of times people just can't do that. And I'm not saying you have to, but certainly you have to be a lot more critical of yourself and value your time a lot higher. So look, don't fall into this cope of using TikTok for Islamic purposes or Instagram Reels or anything like that. That's all I have for this video. Don't forget to not stop making dua to Allah. Check out Clean Islamic Streetwear in the description. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.